Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Dara Connolly. I'm so glad you're here. And today I want to talk about how to crush imposter syndrome and to flip fear. Imposter syndrome is the belief that in spite of all your accomplishments, you believe that you're not ready, you're not worthy, and that at some point somebody's going to figure you out that you are a fraud. And I have to be honest with you, 70% of women feel this way. Can you relate? Especially entrepreneurial women. I know I suffered with this for many, many years. In fact, fear was my middle name. I lived in fear for a long time. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because since 2004, I've been training women and helping women. And I got to tell you, I've met thousands and thousands of women that I have seen how fear holds them back from going after their dreams. And by this end of this webinar today, I'm going to give you 3 practical tools out of my 15 tools that you can use starting today to help crush imposter syndrome and flip fear. I hope you're excited about this because I so want to help you. I'm so tired of watching women let fear hold us back from our dreams. Do you agree that fear holds us back? If you do, and you know fear is holding you back from being who you want to be, then you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and get started. So for a long time, I was the hider. I was afraid of everything. In fact, people used to tease me as the what if girl because I was afraid of everything. I wouldn't even participate, okay? That was my life. And I'll just give you a little bit of my story so you understand that I know if this is something that you're struggling with in fear in your career, to go after the dreams that you want, start a new business, relationships. I get it because I lived afraid of everything. And if I'm able to be vulnerable here, I hope that's okay. I basically didn't participate in anything. And when I was younger, my mom saw that and she forced me to take a karate class, which I hated. I didn't want to do it. And I wanted to quit. And she said, you can't quit. And eventually, because I can't quit, I end up getting my black belt. Now, the funny thing is, just because I had this belt, people assumed I was fearless, and I wasn't, because fear comes from the inside. It's a emotion that we create from perceived threats. And I was afraid of everything, you name it. If I was driving, I was afraid of the car would crash. If I was dating, I was afraid you would break my heart. I mean, just every little area of my life. And even as an adult, when I went back to teaching karate, and I opened 2 karate schools and they were successful, I still had imposter syndrome, this belief that I wasn't good enough and that I'm not supposed to be doing this. And someday somebody's going to figure me out. It's insane what we put ourselves through. Do you let fear hold you back? Now, what I noticed for me is that I lived as the hider. And this is, psychologists have found that there's 4 traps that we fall into. Can you relate to this? Where you don't want to show up. You never show up to whatever there is to do because you want to hide. That's your go-to reaction. And that was certainly mine. And I can understand if that's where you're at, and I empathize with you, and I want to get you out of this trap. The next trap is we hesitate because we just never feel ready. So we come up with every excuse in the book. Now, by the way, let me just tell you something. I'm one of these people that's going to give you the real deal. I don't like webinars that just tell you the what and the why and not give you the how. Okay? So right now, if you're a hesitator or a hider, you want to take a small step. You have to just think small. A lot of times what happens is people think too big, that dream, that ultimate goal of I want to live in France, or I want to open a restaurant, or I want to write a book. And they're thinking so big, which is great. But if fear is getting overwhelming, then just take a small step. What can you do today? Maybe you can talk to somebody who's done that, or research it, or read a book on it. Don't overwhelm yourself. That's one thing you can do right now. But another trap that I find women fall into particularly is hypercriticalness, where we self-sabotage everything. It's not good enough. If it's not perfect, it's not good enough. Is that you? Because if it is, then you need to develop the mantra, done is better than perfect. I'm totally serious, because the hypercritical person will never put themselves out there because most likely somewhere along the way, somebody told them that it's not good enough, and they've let that really sink in. And the fourth is that we feel helpless. We are full of self-doubt, full of insecurities and low self-esteem. And I can tell you, I've been in all of these traps at some point in my life, and it's not fun because it's consuming. And the helpless person has to realize their accomplishments, that they can actually do it. Now, if you're tired of living this way, what you need to understand is that it's a belief that you've taken on. So for me, if I was still stuck, thank goodness I'm not, but in that what if phase of my life where I'm afraid of everything, I realized that that was a belief that I was creating, that it was all from the inside out. So I challenge you to ask yourself, what is it that you believe? Because what I know for sure is that every single one of you, whether you're a hider, hesitator, hypercritical, perfectionist, or someone who feels helpless and not worthy, every single one of you can crush imposter syndrome and flip fear and bring your gifts to the world. But you have to understand that you have to be willing to change that belief. And this isn't hard to do, by the way. So before we get into the steps, the easy 3 steps that you can do right now today is I want to take you through the cycle of habits and beliefs, because this is what we're all trapped in. And I'm not someone who invented this. Oh, before I tell you that, by the way, I don't know if you know this. I was astounded when I heard this. Fear is not innate. There's only 2 fears we're born with, the fear of falling or the fear of loud noises. So that means if you think about this, every other fear that you have, whether it's the fear of not being good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, somebody's going to figure me out, I'm not, whatever, that's a story that you picked up along the way. It's so those beliefs and those stories get stuck, and this is the cycle. So let me take you through this cycle, because once we understand how the cycle works, we can karate chop it right in half. So we have our belief, whatever it is. That belief, when we continue to think it all day, turns into a thought. When we're repeating that thought round and round on that wire, it turns into a feeling, and we express our feelings into an emotional response. And the feelings then turn into an action, and the could turn into whatever it is you decide to do. I feel motivated to go work out, so I'm going to go to the gym. And then that action reinforces the results. It gives you whatever result you want, and then you believe the result. You just worked out, you feel great. The result is, the belief is, hey, I'm in great shape. Just goes around. Now, if that's a positive, right? I believe I'm a healthy person, so I'm going to think before I choose my food. If I want to eat potato chips or something healthier, I eat something healthier, I feel great. The action is I can have more energy, I can do more in my day, and the result is I'm in better shape. So I look in the mirror and I believe, hey, I'm in great shape, I'm healthy. That's easy. That's the positive. But what happens is a lot of times we don't stay in the positive. I know for me, it's easy to go right to the negative. Negative's more fun. I get it. That's why negative people like to commiserate with other negative people. It's easy to complain. I'm cracking myself up here. But the point I'm trying to make is we usually go to the negative. I'm not good enough. I don't feel worthy. And then it turns into the thought of, I can't do it. And that thought turns into the feeling of worthlessness and depression. And then, of course, that's inactivity. And then the result is disappointment. And when you feel disappointed with yourself, the belief is, I'm a loser. And that's where we're stuck. And this cycle is enough, right? We have to stop it. And it's like being on a bad carnival ride that you just want to get off. So I'm happy you're here, because I want to get you off that bad ride. Because I know for me, I've lived on that ride for a long time. Years and years. My whole life would have went by that way too if I didn't catch myself. And this is what I want you to do. So you have to understand what you believe, whatever it is that you believe, that you insert the blank. What do you believe? You're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worthy for that dream, you're unlovable, or because you failed in the past, you're going to fail again in the future. You're not smart enough to make more money, you don't come from a good enough background to go for that, or you just don't have it in you, you're a lazy person, you're not cut out for running a business. Whatever belief you have matters, because your realities are the results of what you believe. So it's important to ask yourself what you believe and what fear you have around that belief. So if we were in person, I would want to know, what fear do you have and how is it holding you back? How has that fear held you back? You see, those fears just come from those deep-rooted beliefs that you have. And it can be from something somebody said or something you say to yourself. You're not born with it. You're not born with those fears. You pick them up along the way. And imposter syndrome, believing we're not good enough, is a belief that's stemmed in fear, as well as all other fears you have, self-doubt, or I'm not good enough. It comes from something somewhere. It could be a bad relationship that made you feel shame, so now you're holding on to that still. But every single one of you can crush imposter syndrome and flip fear. I like to say kick, I'm sitting so I can't kick imposter syndrome to the curb. Because you don't have to take that on. It's actually a choice to feel fear and a choice to have imposter syndrome. We may not want to believe that, but it's true, because we're not born with it, remember. We're not born feeling unworthy. We're not born feeling those fears. So grab a pen and paper right now. And what I want you to do is write this down. I'm going to give you 3 steps you can do right now. And let's do this. Let's crush this. Let's kick this. Let's kick this baby to the curb and get it out of there. So step number 1 is to write down all of your accomplishments in life that you are really proud of. And go way back. Start early. The earliest accomplishment you can remember. What did you do? Were you successful in school? Did you challenge yourself and win an award? Your degrees, a job you started, a job you excelled at, everything you can think of, and come up with as many as you can, at least 50. And so just write down top accomplishments, because you're going to need to do this later. And you have to write it down. You can't just plug it into your phone. So I want you to feel yourself writing. And when you go through the mechanics of writing, it helps your brain really remember the experience and put yourself in it and feel it. So the power's in writing it down. So be sure you write it down. And think of as many things as you can. And what you need to do next is to look at each one and validate it. Validate what you took for you to achieve that. All the hard work, all the years you put in, all the experience. You have some advanced degree, bachelor's or beyond. You put time into learning that. Validate that. That didn't come easy. I mean, even if you're the smartest person in the world, you still had to work at it and try. This is how we crush imposter syndromes. Because here's the thing. If you worked hard for your achievements, you're not an imposter. You didn't get lucky. You may have had some things that are fortunate for you, but your whole life wasn't based on luck. It was most likely based on working hard to get to where you are. And you need to acknowledge that. You need to acknowledge the work you put in and the achievements that you have. Validate it. It's very important. That's step 1. And celebrate all those achievements. You're going to keep this list going. You don't stop. Celebrate the achievements that you're about to do and you haven't done yet. And when you do, look back and go, hey, I did that. And what I want you to do, especially when you're feeling really crappy and you have to do something new and it's scary and you're really stepping outside your comfort zone, you go back and you look at that list and you realize how much you have achieved. Because at every point in your life, you had to move through fear. And I bet when you look through all those things that you accomplished, you'll remember that 2 things will happen. You'll remember, number 1, that it didn't come easy. You did have to work at it. So therefore you can't be an imposter because that was something you achieved. And number 2 is that You were probably pretty afraid at the time, but you did it anyway. Every single thing along the way requires moving through fear. Okay, second step to how to crush imposter syndrome and move through fear is to reframe failure. And I'll tell you briefly that I've worked with lots of powerful women, from celebrities, the top CEOs. All-star women make 6, 7, 8 figures. And the one thing they have in common is that they don't look at failures as a disaster or they're not good enough. They look at failures as a growing, as a learning. So what I want you to do on another piece of paper is write down what your biggest failures were in life, whether it was a divorce or you dropped out of school or you ran a business into the ground and went bankrupt, or whatever you consider to be a failure that happened. And then another time, after you're done watching this, write down what you learned from it. Because there's a lesson in everything. And you cannot move on from the failure successfully unless you find the lesson. Now, what I often find is that, especially women, we often beat ourselves up about our failures, and that's because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else. I don't care what somebody else is doing, and you shouldn't either. This is your life, okay? Because what happens is you're comparing yourself to that person's high. You didn't see their failures. You're just watching them at their peak. And you watch all this social media noise and you see them at their peak. You don't know their story. Every single person has failed. In fact, on average, most people fail at least 7 times. I'm always baffled when I read stories of famous people and how many times they have failed, if you really get the backstory on it. In fact, J.K. Rowling, we all know, was not successful on the first attempt. It took 12 publishers. Now, how many of us would have stopped at maybe the first or second or third? Do you stop at the first no, at the first failure? You cannot stop. You have to keep going. The difference, this is what makes people successful, is they don't stop at the first failure. They learn from it, redirect, kind of like the universe saying, you're going the wrong way. Why don't you turn a little bit this way? And then things will open up. And I certainly know this because I'm someone who let a lot of failures happen in my life. For example, I can count on both hands how many jobs didn't work out for me, careers that I was not working. And if I stayed stuck in that, I wouldn't be where I am today. But it was a way of redirecting. You have to look at failure as a blessing. It's good. We need failure because it helps us. Okay, it tells us when we're off course. And every single person, no matter how much money they're making or how successful or how confident they appear on the outside, feels the same thing as you and I. They feel self-doubt. They feel imposter syndrome. They feel fear. Because if you don't, you would be a narcissist. That's the only type of person who thinks they can do everything perfectly the first time. Most of us are going to make mistakes. So keep learning from your mistakes. That's number 2, step 2. What did you learn from your mistakes? And number 3 is to surround yourself with positive people who really appreciate your accomplishments and your successes, and they believe in you. They compliment you. They're encouraging you. They're your number 1 fan. That's who you want to be around. And if you don't have that, you need to eliminate those toxic people. And I have another webinar on how to do that. So are you surrounding yourself with positive people? You cannot be in a place of positivity if you're surrounded by negative people. It's very hard to do that. It's exhausting to do that, in fact. You can't be an imposter when you've worked hard for where you are. And I know you've worked hard for where you are. Now, I want to show you something because I lived in fear for a long time. And one day I thought of this word fear and I flipped it. And this is the acronym I came up with that helped me. Okay, I asked myself, is my fear rational? So when I let fear of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not ready, I'm the hider, remember. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be out there. I can't do it. I can't show up. I'm quiet. All that stuff. I had to ask myself, are those fears rational? Because we're not born, if we're not born with fear, that fear cannot be rational because somebody somewhere told us that. We're picking up their beliefs, not ours. It's not a real fear. And the only way we make it real is if we keep reinforcing it and keep believing it. So when your fear isn't rational, then you have to decide, is it holding you back from living an authentic life? And most likely it is. I'm not talking about fears of something tangible, like a spider. I'm talking about fear of, I can't do it. And if that's holding you back, how are you going to get through your life? Because everything you've ever done to get to this point, you've had to walk through fear. So if it's holding you back from asking someone out or moving to a new city or going for that job that you want, it's preventing you from being authentic. And that's something that we have to stop. We can't do that anymore. So here's how you stop it. When you feel the fear coming up and it's overwhelming, you have to change it from fear to excitement. And you do that through physiology. I'm not going to get into physiology on this webinar because it's too in depth, but you do that through physiology. You do that by replacing your beliefs. And you can feel excitement, which then gets your body into action. Okay, and then that's why F is feel it. It's a process of changing our physiology. Now, I could talk a long time on fear, but I don't want to make this overwhelming. I want to make this manageable for you today. I talk more about fear in my Flip Your Fear book. I just wanted to give you a quick recap that when you go through these 4 steps, it greatly diffuses the fear. And I've seen it happen with the thousands of women that I've trained. In fact, let me take you through a little bit of some of the people I've helped because I really want to help you. These are some of the women that I've worked with, and I don't want to single anyone out, so that's why I'm posting them a lot at the same time. Becca, who's on the screen, was someone who felt timid her entire life. She let fear hold back her dreams, and she's actually was someone who worked with therapists for many, many years, but it was taking too long. She wasn't seeing results until I worked with her, and now she's pursuing political office. Alicia, who's on the screen, wasn't reaching her full potential. She was letting fear overcome her and hold her back, especially in her career. And she worked with other coaches and spent thousands of dollars and wasn't seeing results. And I got her to change her beliefs, and now she's very successful in her career and pursuing her passions. Vanessa is another woman who is on the screen who let past failures hold her back. In fact, she's a therapist who has advanced degrees in psychology, has done lots of self-help work, has worked with me for just a few weeks, and has already seen astounding results. These are just a sample of some of the women I've worked with, and I want to help you too. So if you're ready to go further with me and learn how you can flip fear around and really crush imposter syndrome so you never have to have that in your life again, click below for a free call. And I'll even throw in an invitation to visit my mastermind for free. I have a weekly mastermind group for women, specifically to learn how to make more money, to break through fear and make more money. So are you ready? Are you ready to flip fear and finally kick imposter syndrome to the curb? If you are, let's connect.